Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Kiki and today's video is going to be a book review on Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This book is trending at the moment. It is everywhere. I cannot log on to Bookstagram, Booktube or BookTok without seeing this book somewhere in my feed. I'm just going to add my own 2 cents here. I'm going to add my own review to the trend. I'm going to share a different perspective though. Is this worth the hype? Is it worth the trending hype it is currently getting? I don't think it is. I think the book is really good. I enjoyed parts of it. I'll share what I rated this book at the end of this review. I don't think it is actually worth the amount of hype it's getting. I would say this book is like Divergent feels. Very How to Meet Your Dragon almost as well. I thoroughly enjoyed the dragons in this. I love books with dragons. Firstly, going into this book, I was really excited for it. I had seen the hype. I had seen all the reviews for it. Not many lower star reviews, all great 5-star reviews. So I had high hopes, as we all do when we go into a book with this much hype. The first 13 chapters of this book had me absolutely hooked. I did a live reacts over on my Bookstagram for this, and I have saved these to my highlights if you want to go check them out and see how I was reacting to the book as I was reading it. By chapter 4, I was honestly ready just to throw adult life out the window for the day and completely dive into this book with no interruptions at all. I was so hooked. I loved it. I loved the world building. I loved how the author incorporated her info dumping into this book. Sometimes with fantasy books, especially the first book in a series, the info dumping can be quite tedious. It can be quite hard to read, but I actually really enjoyed the way the author did it in this book. So I was really excited. First 13 chapters started off with a bang. I was loving it. And then it happened. Diving further into this book, I found it to become quite repetitive. You were in a college setting. Actually, to be honest, it kind of gave me Zodiac Academy vibes as well, without the bullying. We have a scene as she's walking to a class with the classmate, and we would have a scene in the battle brief class, then she would go to the sparring mats, and then a challenge would happen, and then repeat. It felt quite repetitive in that sense. So once we started diving into that repetitiveness, the book started kind of falling away from me. It was getting harder and harder for me to pick up because I was just tired of it, really. Our female main character in this was written exceptionally well. We do have a disability representation here, and I cannot praise the author enough for how she wrote that. Absolutely amazing. The female main character though, her inner monologue was such a drag, like an absolute drag. She was so strong. She really fought her way through this book. Her growth was exceptional physically. Every time she laid eyes on the male main character, we would have like paragraphs of her inner monologue of how hot she found him, whilst things were happening around her, and she's standing there drooling over the MMC's abs, which, you know, after the first few encounters, cool. But once we're getting it every single time she looks at him, it was too much. Honestly, too much. I really got over it in the end. I was like, okay, we get it. He's hot. Cool. Let's move on, yeah? Either take things further with that or back off and focus on what's happening in front of you. We don't need to be told how many times this character is hot. As we dive further into the book and as we learn more about the MMC, he is a morally grey character, and to be quite honest, he was a stock standard morally grey character. I honestly did not find anything extra special about him. I love a morally grey character. I can read all of them. I have read many morally grey characters, but you still need to give your character something a little extra, something a little bit more to make him different from this morally grey character that we read in this book. And I didn't really find that with this one. I found him just to be a stock standard morally grey character. I have seen some fan art of him, and I love the fan art. I love how he's described. He didn't give me these possessive touch her and die who did this to you vibes. You know those vibes that we really, really love in fantasy books from our morally grey characters? I really didn't get that from him. A lot of the time he was portraying these feelings through side characters. So he would walk off and disappear for days and not see her, but he has a friend or someone he trusts following her, watching her, making sure she's okay and stays alive. It meant that I lost the connection between him and her. I'm not sure if maybe we needed more of his POV. We get one chapter at the very end of the book with his POV, and that was actually really amazing. I actually really loved being in his head at the end there. So I think if we had had a couple more of his POVs throughout the book, I might have felt a bit more connected to him. There was no connection for me at all with this male main character. He was just a normal, morally grey guy. Like, I just didn't find anything special about him. The dragons. The dragons in this book were, I loved the dragons so much. The dragons were my favourite part of this book, hands down. I just needed more. I needed more. I wanted more dragons. The banter between the dragons and the humans was just so spot on and so good. They do speak telepathically to the humans that they bond with. The scene where our female main character bonds with her dragon is just so good. I had really lost the book, and then I got to this scene, and this scene is what actually made me pick the book back up and made me kind of go, oh my god, okay, this is getting good again. I love the dragons so much. I love their witty banter. I loved how protective they were. I loved their vibes. It was so amazing. I just needed more. I don't feel like we got enough. I feel like if they can telepathically talk to these humans from a distance and stuff, why didn't we get more of that? We got a bit, and towards the end we got more. I feel like we could have had less inner monologue over how hot our male main character was and more banter between the dragons telepathically. I think that would have picked the book completely up for me, and it would have really taken it to a next level. If you were going into this book expecting a lot of romance, expecting it to be a new adult fantasy, hold on to that thought. This book is actually an incredibly big slow burn. There is only, I think, 2 spicy scenes in this. For a good 271 pages, I found this book to be written as a YA book. And then all of a sudden, once things came together, it had completely switched and we moved into a new adult book setting. The writing kind of slightly changed. The first half of this book was very YA. It wasn't very new adult throughout the whole book at all. It's a slow burn. It's not a tension-filled slow burn. There is some tension there. It's not completely boring. For a fantasy book, I expect more tension. I expect more, I'm really struggling to stay away from you type tension. And this wasn't that at all. This is a true slow burn. And then we do finally get the spicy scenes towards the end there, and there's only 2 of them. It's not a lot. It's not like a From Blood and Ash situation at all. I don't know, this kind of falls in between a YA and a new adult for me, to be honest. Like, I feel like be one or the other. Either do a fade to black scene or dial down the spice and you can make this book a straight YA book, or dial it up a bit more and bring in that like hot-headed tension throughout the whole book to make it a completely new adult book. After a while of reading this book, I got to a point where I came to terms with the fact that it wasn't worth the hype. It just wasn't for me. There were parts where I would read a chapter and then I would put it down. I'm pretty sure on my Instagram stories at one point I picked it up with an update and I was like, I've just read 10 pages. 10 pages of the same thing that I read in the 10 pages before. And I was really struggling to get through it. Towards the end though, got a bit more fast paced. Things started happening. It is a fantasy book that follows your true blueprint of a fantasy book. It is quite predictable, for me at least. Don't forget, I have read a lot of fantasy books. This book here to me was written how fantasy books were written like 10 years ago. So I found it to be quite predictable. That doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy the outcomes though, because even though I saw them coming, I still loved that they were there. Towards the end there, where things did start happening, the betrayal happened, the cliffhanger happened. Oh my god, the cliffhanger. That cliffhanger is the only reason why I will pick up book 2. I would love to see where this goes now. I would love to see how it progresses. I would love to see if we pull away from the college setting. I would love to see if there's more dragons that get involved. There is something that happens at the end of the book. I'm doing no spoilers here, so I'm not going to say what it is. I found this to be quite unnecessary. I feel like it was thrown in there because the rest of the book didn't really have much happening and the author needed to hit us where it hurts. And she hit us where it hurts. It actually made me quite mad because I didn't feel like it was necessary, especially for book 1. Maybe in book 2, but book 1, I just didn't feel like it needed to be put in there at all. I'm not going to give away what it is though, so if you would like to know, read the book. If you do know, leave me a comment and let me know if you think what happens at the end is necessary or not. All in all, friends, the book was good. It wasn't amazing. I didn't feel like it was a live rent-free in my head story. I finished it. I moved on to the next book really quickly. I really have not thought about this since I finished it. Book 2 will come around and I don't think I'll rush to read it. I will eventually read it because I'd like to know what happens, but I'm not going to rush to it. I rated this book 3.5 stars. I wish it was worth the hype for me. I'm so happy that it is worth the hype for everyone else and for everyone who is on the trending train with it. For myself though, it just didn't do it. It fell flat. The beginning was amazing, the end was amazing, but majority of that middle of the book, it was hard to read, it was repetitive, I found it quite boring. I'm not here to rate a book on the beginning and the end of the book. I'm here to rate the book as a whole. If you love fantasy books, if you love dragons, if you love a little bit of slow tension, if you love world building, I highly recommend. I do recommend it because I feel like there's a lot of readers out there will love this book. Give me a comment below and let me know your thoughts. If you agree with my opinions, drop a comment below. I would love to know what everyone thinks of this one, if you think it's worth the hype or if it's not. If you like this video, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next review.